Hello, I'm Liz Zorab of Byther Farm. Welcome to my podcast, Gardening Demystified.
This is a Byther Farm podcast.
I'm really excited to be starting this, and I'd like to introduce you to my co-host, Huw Richards.
Hello, how are you doing today, Liz?
I'm really excited.
Yeah, me too, actually. It's going to be something fun and I think a big learning curve.
A massive learning curve.
It will, because you and I, we're both used to being on video and in front of a camera, but now we're faced with a big, fluffy microphone and we're indoors.
Indoors and just staring at each other.
I know. I'm sorry about that, Liz. So yes, welcome to Gardening Demystified. Thank you for inviting me to be a co-host and be on quite a few of the episodes, not all of them, but I'm really looking forward to it and the journey, and I think it's going to help so many people. But for those of you who don't know who you are, Liz, give us a sense of your story, because for me, I found it it's not just really interesting and fascinating, it's also a really inspiring story. So tell us how you got to sitting here today and the journey that you've been on over the last few years.
So I had normal jobs previously, and about 5 years ago I started getting quite ill and spent 6 to 8 months really very poorly. And during that time, we moved to Byther Farm, which is a 0.8 acre small holding. And it became really obvious I wasn't going to be going back to work in a normal sense. So I suggested that I grew and raised as much of our food as possible from the land here as my financial contribution to our household. When we moved in, we just had a paddock that had previously had alpacas and a pony in it, so it had very short grass. And I have spent the last 4 years creating a vegetable garden and a food forest, and now a market garden as well. And that provides us with about 85% of our food.
Wow, it's amazing.
It's been interesting. It's been exciting. It's been full of trial and error, lots of error, but I've learnt masses from it. And along the way, I started writing a blog, and then after a year of that, I started creating videos for my YouTube channel, Liz Zorab by the Farm. One of the wonderful things about podcasts, particularly when they're done in somebody's kitchen like this one is that you've got all the background noises going on, and
it's hailing.
It's
amazing. I love it.
So you may on and off hear hailing, you may hear cups of tea being made,
but what we're doing is we're keeping it real.
We are keeping it real.
We're not in some fancy studio, we're in a lovely kitchen, and my view isn't so good. But at least you can look outside. Oh dear. So something unique about your journey is that in a very detailed way, you have documented it in both starting a blog and then a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
How have you found that?
It's been really stressful, but it's been amazingly useful. And the stress is that it's made me really look at everything that I'm doing step by step.
Yeah.
So it's not that creating a video isn't stressful, but it actually makes me focus. So on those times when something's going horribly wrong, I'm looking at it quite closely. And then because I'm editing a video, I'm looking at it repeatedly, which really hammers home the mistakes I've made.
Wow.
But to be able to go back and say, how did I resolve that? What did I do about that? Or even when did that happen? How long has it taken to recover from that mistake? Has been a really valuable tool.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a video creator myself, I feel exactly the same. And sometimes if I'm not feeling motivated, the knowledge of needing to do a YouTube video kind of prompts me in a way, and it gets me doing something and outside. And then when it's a really stormy day, it's nice to also catch up and be inspired by what everyone else is doing. But an approach that you're really taking and kind of hammering home into people now is the whole idea of demystifying gardening.
Yeah.
And the name of your podcast is Gardening Demystified. So tell us why you've chosen that name and why you're wanting to explore this angle, because does gardening even need to be demystified?
I just felt that there are so often people, including me, just don't understand how things work. So rather than going absolutely back to basics with an instruction manual type podcast, I want to actually just talk about some of the things that seem complicated, but actually they're not. They can be incredibly simple, and like anything, we can make gardening as difficult and as complicated as we want to make it. But I have a phrase that I use an awful lot, which is nature just wants to grow. And I want to explore some of the ideas around that. So the podcast is going to be much more of an exploratory conversation with people rather than necessarily an instruction manual that you'll listen to.
Wow, that sounds amazing. And last night we were brainstorming different ideas for things, and one of the things that I really liked was you were trying to distinguish between what is the easy thing to do, between what is the right thing to do,
Yeah.
and also finding pathways, because you've got that kind of mainstream commercialism on one side, and then trying to be as kind as possible to nature, but sometimes it's about finding that balance. And what I love about your videos, and what I can't wait to hear on this podcast, is hearing a lot more about your thought process, because I think it's unique, and you garden in such an inspiring way. And every time I come here, you've done some massive projects and you've learnt stuff. But what's great about you and your channel is you're not afraid to share those mistakes. And I think
absolutely not. I think that's key.
Yeah, and I think too often in this day and age of social media and Instagram, everything needs to look perfect. But you keep it so authentic that it's such a breath of fresh air. And to have that as well in the form of a podcast, which I can listen to when I'm driving down to see you, or on the train to the metropolis of London, I can close my eyes and just really learn a lot and be inspired.
I hope so. I hope that you will be inspired by the people I'm talking to, if not by me, because those conversations for me are learning experiences and real eye-openers, and I'm fairly sure that through conversations that I'll have with people for the podcast, what I'm doing out in the garden will change. It will be influenced by those conversations. So for me, it's a learning process too, which I find really exciting. Absolutely.
And it kind of links into another question I had for you, which we were discussing earlier, which was creating this podcast. What element of it scares you the most?
Yeah, so when I was thinking about how this podcast might work, and I suddenly realised the thing that I actually found quite frightening about it was actually just talking to so many people that I not only admire but I hold in really high esteem, and that there's a very real chance I'll get dumbstruck and a bit starstruck.
I can see that, but I also feel that there's a lot of people who would feel the exact same thing meeting you and speaking to you. So I always find it interesting that there's like no end to the top, really. You just keep on taking those steps, and I'm amazed, and it's amazing how many people you're helping through your videos and now through podcasts. And I'm really excited for you. I'm so excited for this journey and to learn so much. And I hope you as well, listening to this podcast, are excited, because believe me, I'm not just being biased because I'm a good friend of Liz. She actually knows what she is doing. She walks the walk. She doesn't just, talk the talk. She actually goes out there and does it. And you're not afraid to admit that it is hard work, and sometimes it's just painful, and you come back indoors absolutely sodden. You don't pretend that it's an easy jolly drinking cups of tea all the time.
Absolutely not.
But what that does is, when you have that passion though, it's just part of it, and you seem to enjoy it and thrive off it.
Oh, I do. It has taken me from a not terribly healthy place to emotionally and physically a really good space, and I think it's becoming more and more well recognised how gardening is so good for us physically, but mostly for our mental health.
Yeah, something you mentioned recently was as your garden became healthier, you became healthier, which meant you could put more input into the garden, and you had this, it's almost this, you know, you talk about a vicious cycle.
Yeah, well, it's an exponential growth of health. Yeah, no, it's been, as I've done more and I've got healthier, I've been able to do more, and that just builds and builds and builds, and the enjoyment and the excitement of being out there working and the experimenting, and that's one of the things I really like doing. Is I love experiments, so that will be something I'll be talking to everybody about what experiments they've done in their gardens and what has worked for them and what really didn't work.
Wow, and I'm really curious, what kind of things do you have lined up in upcoming episodes? What can we look forward to?
So, well, I'm going to start by talking to people that I know very well. So, Huw, I'll be talking with you.
Oh, gosh, no.
I will fire some questions at you.
Brilliant.
But then other content creators on YouTube, people who are working with gardening on a practical level, campaigning levels, and it will be conversations about what inspires them, what excites them, as much as they're prepared to share some of their failures and their mistakes and what they've learned from them, because I think we learn more from our trial and our error and our mistakes than we do from everything being perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. And that sounds really exciting with what we have coming up.
And if you want to find all the information about each episode, the show notes and all the essential links, because we will be referring you to other links, you can find those notes wherever you stream this podcast, and also at bytherfarm.co.uk.
Now, Liz, when can we expect new episodes? Because I am itching to get listening.
So new episodes will be out on Thursday at noon on the first and the third Thursday of each month. Brilliant.
I'm looking forward to it. And finally, do you have a parting word, or how would you like to sign off these podcasts? And I'll say goodbye, but I'll leave it over to you now.
And so, wherever you are in the world and whatever you've got planned for today, I hope it's a good one. And I also hope you'll join us again next time.
Goodbye.
The podcast you've been listening to is a Byther Farm production. All rights reserved.